This is old Mr. Kent of MrKent.com. And we've had storm, if you didn't notice at the beginning there, we've had some really stormy weather. So I haven't been able to get out and make videos like I would prefer to. And so we didn't have rain, we just had a lot of wind and dust. So, but today's kind of clear and partly cloudy, but enough sunshine. I like to make videos in the sunshine. So anyway, I'm old Mr. Kent. I've been recording my life story on these bike rides. And in the last video, I had taken my brother down to California in my Cessna 170, and he bought himself an airplane. It was Piper Cherokee 140, and so we got him home, he left, and now I was kind of settling in with my 170 because I had just gotten it before when we went to California to buy mine, he found his. So anyway, that's the story if you haven't been following. All right, they got holes in the road here. So, let's get started. A tail dragger is a lot better than for flying and everything than a regular tricycle landing gear. If you know what I'm talking about, if you push a grocery cart backwards, it spins around, tries to put the steering wheels in front, and that's what a tail dragger does. When you land it, it wants to turn around like a grocery cart. So you have to be trained and learn to be very careful when you're landing and taking off. So because the easy way to learn to fly is to use the tricycle landing gear that's got the big old heavy wheel in the front, and it's made for driving around on the ground, where I like a plane that's made for flying. So anyway, so that's how I got my 170. And by the way, if you haven't been keeping up, I was the chief engineer of a Christian radio station that was located at a church. And the pastor is the guy that got me really interested in getting into flying and how to get my airplane and all that stuff. So he said, when I got back with my 170, he wanted to go fly it because he had told me that when he was a cop, before he got to be a preacher, he had I don't know, it was probably a Taylorcraft. It's a little two-seater, small tail dragger airplane with a small engine, but it's just fun to fly around in. And he had one, and so he was telling me all about it and everything. And so when I got my 170, it's a tail dragger, and so he decided he'd like to go out and try flying it. Now he had a great big old heavy Beechcraft Bonanza V-tail heavy airplane, and that was what he had been flying, but he hadn't flown a tail dragger for a long time. So he wanted to try out my bike. My bike. I'm on a bike. He wanted to try out my tail dragger. So we went out to the airport. I sat on the right side. Now remember, I just learned how to land a tail dragger 2 weeks earlier, and I didn't have a lot of confidence and a lot of experience. But he sat on the left side, which is where the pilot sits. I sat on the right side, and of course I had never flown from the right side. I'd never been in that plane on the right side, on the right seat, you know. So anyway, he gets clearance from the tower, taxis out on the runway, gives it full power, and unlike his heavy airplane, my Cessna 170 just pops off the ground really quick and starts drifting, and he panicked. It's like he didn't know what to do. So he said, take over. So sitting in the right seat where I've never flown from before, I took over. And so I got us up and got us flying, and then I said, all right, now you can take over, you know. So he took over, and we flew around. And then when it came time to land, he was so shaken up from the takeoff that he didn't want to land. He wanted me to land. Well, I had never landed from that seat. Everything's backwards on the right seat. When you're sitting on the left seat, the yoke, which is like the steering wheel, that's in your left hand, and the throttle is in your right hand. And you need both of those and the rudder pedals to come in and make a landing, because the plane's going to be going every which way, and so you have to control it with power and everything. So I hadn't sat on the right side, which means I hold on to the yoke with the other hand and the throttle with the other hand. Pedals were the same. Anyway, so we came in, and I managed to make a landing without turning around like a grocery cart. And but he kind of got a bug. He wanted to get him one. So the next thing I know, he found a Flybaby, which is a one-person open cockpit airplane, homemade. He found one in Bonners Ferry. Now, we lived in Pasco, and Pasco's at the bottom end of Washington State, and Bonners Ferry is up near the top end, but it's over in Oregon to the right. So anywhere to the east. So he wanted to get that, so he bought it, and then we had to fly up and get it. Well, he didn't want to try flying at home. He wanted me to fly at home because I'm an expert at landing tail draggers. So we get up there, and the guy was just, it was a kit, or it wasn't a kit, it was a home built, and he had taken all the wings off and everything to store it. So he was just getting finished putting all the wings on and getting everything ready. And then he took it up for a flight, and looks like we're going to get sprinkled on here. They got sprinklers going. All right, so what I'll have to do is I'll have to hurry. Can I make it? I think so. Here we go. All right, I think we made it. Anyway, so I got a couple of pictures from videos that they made, and then they gave me a copy of the video, but my copy didn't come out too well. But I do have a couple of pictures of me getting ready to take off, and when I did take off, you can a picture of me actually taking off. Okay, so anyway, those are the only decent pictures I've got that show that. Now let's see, we're going to go like this, I think. Okay. And so, now first of all, I got to explain something. And there's two kinds of control systems for airplanes. There's the yoke, which is what my airplane had, and that's where you steer it with a steering wheel. It's about half there. And then let's go back this way. See if we can go back this way. And then the throttle on a standard plane, the throttle's pulled over beneath the instrument panel, and then your pedals are on the floor. Well, this was another system where they have a stick that comes up between your legs, and you move that stick around to control the airplane. If you move it left and right, it makes the plane tilt left and right. If you move it up and down, it makes the plane go up and down. And then over on the left is the throttle, which is how you control your speed and when you're landing and things like that. So basically, that open cockpit airplane had everything backwards, because normally I land with the yoke in my left hand and the throttle in my right hand, but on this plane I had to land with the throttle on my left hand and the stick in my right hand. And I had never flown with a stick before, and I had never flown open cockpit before. And so let's see, I will go down here. And so it was a little nervous, and they all said goodbye, and I taxied and took off. The first thing I did wrong was as soon as the tail came up, is I gave it way too much elevator, and I zoomed up, and then I overcorrected, and next thing you know, I'm looking at the ground almost. And then I finally got that figured out. And I climbed up to about 3,000 feet above the ground. And it was interesting. I'll put a link to a video that I've got where I recorded the audio is from the end of the day when I made this flight. And so it's called Why They Put Seatbelts in Airplanes. And by the way, the seatbelt in this airplane, you know, most seatbelts in airplanes, they have, you push it together, but then when you want to take it apart, you got to pull a lever and pull the belt apart with the other hand. But not this homebrew airplane. He used a Buick seatbelt. A Buick seatbelt, you push it together, but then when you want to undo it, you just tap the center of the belt. And so if you happen to make a mistake and hit that center thing, your belt comes undone. That's not good when you're in an open cockpit airplane. So anyway, I took off, and our plan was that I would just fly down to a field at Sandpoint, Idaho, and land, and we'd make sure everything was working right. Only thing is, when I got up to about 3,000 feet, I had a terrible turbulence and a crosswind that from my right to my left. And so I had never landed this plane before, and landing in a crosswind with a tail dragger is like committing suicide if you don't know what you're doing. So as it turned out, then I just flew on over, and since I said we'd meet there, I looked down, and they were their plane was on the ground down there in a taxiway, and they were looking up at me as I flew by. And so then they came by, and now this plane had no electronics, no radio, and so I had a handheld that I laid actually it was on the canvas, because that was the bottom of that was the floor of the plane. It's hard to explain, but anyway, and so I had a little portable radio, and we were on the same frequency, and so pretty soon they come flying by me, and so I talked to them. They couldn't hear me because all the noise was being generated by the wind in the open cockpit, and I couldn't hear them because of that noise. And so I said I would go on to Richland, Washington, which was part of the Tri-Cities. It's across the river from Pasco, but Richland Airport, you didn't have to talk to the tower to get in, and so I decided that's where I'll go. So they thought I said Ritzville. So they flew on ahead, and they landed at Ritzville so I could land there again. And of course, I didn't say Ritzville, so I didn't even know they were there. And so I kept on flying. And then the thing is I started at noon, and by now it was getting to be close to 3 hours of flying, and that only had a 15-gallon tank, which burns 4 gallons an hour. And so I was getting low on fuel, and I'm not going to go into the details, but I had no idea how much fuel I had left. So I thought, I've got to stop somewhere. Well, in Connell, Washington, they have an egg strip, and I think it's still there. And so I thought, let's see what the windsock looks like there, because if I land into the wind, then I'll be okay. And that runway was perpendicular to the other ones, which had been in the way I was going. So Connell Airport, airstrip, was good for me to land, because I could just come around, come down, and land into the wind. And so I got into what they call downwind, and then I banked, and by the time I'm losing altitude, and I banked, and I got into what they call crosswind, and then I turned and I started on what they call final. Well, there was a real headwind, and I didn't account for that, so I was a little bit low. Now, I got to stop and show you. If I was in my 170 and I was a little low, I'd grab the throttle down here and push it in and get a little higher, okay, because give more power. But I was not in the 170. I was in the Flybaby, and the throttle's over here and the stick is here. So So yeah, without it, just because of habit, and I wasn't thinking, I'm getting too low. So my brain says push forward on the right hand. Well, that doesn't make you go faster. That noses you down further. So I pulled back and I gave it power over here like I was supposed to. I got up high enough so that I could come in and land. By the way, before I got there, all the time I was flying was heavy turbulence. I was bouncing up against the seat belt. Like if I hadn't had the seat belt on, I'd be bouncing out of the cockpit. And when I nosed down to look ahead, because you couldn't see over the top, you had to nose down to see where you're going. When I looked down, I could see it was like a forest of dust devils. I don't know if you know what a dust devil is, but it's a swirl of, it's an updraft. And so it's a big swirl of dust and everything. So that's what I was fighting with all the time I was coming along. So I came down and I managed to land without any problems. Well, there were problems, but I won't take time explaining it. Unless I've got a video, which the link to it is going to be at the end of this video, and you can get a lot more detail. Anyway, so I got landed, and down at the other end of the field there was a building, and I was hoping somebody was there because they had a gas pump, and there was somebody there, and there's a nice lady. And she said, just go fill up and then pay what you fill up. So I used, I think I pumped 4 gallons, and then the thing quit. The gas pump quit. But 4 gallons was enough to get me from Colville to Richland. Okay. So I went out and I got ready to take off, and I thought, you can't take off in this. You have to have somebody hand prop it for you. And so I thought, wow, maybe I could find a rock to put in front of the wheels while I hand prop it. But so I went back in. I asked the lady if she knew how to hand prop a plane, and she kind of laughed at me. And I said, well, because there were chocks out there that you would lay in front of the wheel, then you hand prop it. Then you get in the plane and you have somebody pull the chocks out and you can taxi. And so I asked her if she could pull the chocks out for me. And she said, yes, she'd be glad to do that. She was a little bit shy, but she can do that because they're on ropes. Well, just about the time that we got out there and got ready to hand prop it, a guy drove up in a pickup who knew what he was doing. And so he hand propped me. And got the engine running. Now I had to go up to the other end of the runway and turn around and take off. Well, the runway, I've got a graphic of it, but it didn't come out too good from Earth, from Google Earth. And if you'll notice that at the east end of that runway, it doesn't show too well, but the runway is about 10 feet above the ground around it. And of course, that's all just built up, and there's gravel on the edge, at the edge of the runway. And so I got down there, and just normally, when you want to turn a tail dragger around, you just give it left rudder and go, and it'll turn. But that tail dragger did not have that rudder hooked up like that. And so, I tried to get it to turn, and of course, it wouldn't turn, and now I'm in trouble because I'm at the end of the runway, and I'm only turned halfway around, and if I keep going straight, I'm going to go off the edge of that. I got to stop for this guy. I'm going to go off the edge of the runway buildup. So my only choice was just give it full power and let the rudder do the turning when the wind's going by it. Now I was hoping that was going to work. So let's see, we could go back this way. Let's go back this way. go over here and come around. So, so I gave it full power. I went way too close to the edge of that gravel that went on down over the hill, and I was able to get it turned around and then aim down the runway, and I gave it full power. And I see that we've taken more time than we should have. But anyway, I landed in Richland, and like I said, there's a link coming up that if you click on that, you can hear what I recorded that night after we got home, because I didn't want to forget anything that happened that day. So anyway, that's the story of going to get the flybaby. I've got lots more stories about the flybaby. I don't know if you want to hear them all. I got lots of flying stories. I don't know if you want to hear them all. But that was about a 15-year period of my life having my airplane. And then I finally got rid of it. Went back to motorcycles. But we'll get there one of these days. In the meantime, I want to thank you for watching my video, and God bless.